Welcome everyone to Sports Performance Radio, Episode 4. I am B.Chavez, your host, and as I said, welcome and thank you for joining me. This is very much a special episode for a number of reasons. One, it is the January 1st, 2016 episode, so it earmarks the beginning of a new year and the continued evolution of Sports Performance Radio, and it also offers me the opportunity to thank everyone for 2015. Started this show kind of on a whim, wasn't sure if I could do it, if I should do it, and certainly had no idea how well it would be received. So the fact that I'm here beginning 2016 is very exciting and very gratifying, and the first thing I'd like to do is just thank everyone for coming along. Had a great 2015, a couple of really what I think are excellent shows. Started the year out with Patrick Castelli, Arnold champion Strongman. Moved on through a number of guests, had Lyle McDonald talk diet, just a really great year, and if you haven't, I strongly suggest you go back and listen to some of the older episodes, because we really did do some good stuff. Definitely a lot of growing pains, definitely a learning curve, but that's what everything's about. So I feel really good about what I've done, and I feel even better about what's coming. And speaking of what's coming, another thing I'd like to say is welcome to 2016. This show, first of the year, brings about a number of changes. One is I've implemented already and will continue to implement some, quote, extra shows. And I've literally titled them just that, Sports Performance Radio Extras. Some of them are old audio experts from other things I've done. Some of them are brand new. And in that vein, I'd like to mention that I have a great Sports Performance Radio Extra coming very contemporaneous to this. It'll be out another few days after this particular show, and that is going to be an interview and dialogue with the new 90-kilogram world's strongest man, Zach McCarley. So that's a really great interview. Again, it's a little different than the standard Sports Performance Radio. It's a little more of an interview dialogue, kind of a little more personable, a little different stuff. So definitely a little bit of growth development on my part, and definitely a great interview with a great guy. You can't go wrong with anybody that's got world's strongest man after their name. So definitely something you want to listen for. Another thing that I hope to be able to continue to do in the coming year in 2016 is tell you a little bit about next month's show. And in this case, I can, because that show's already recorded. I have yet to do the production, but the February 1st, 2016 show will be with Andrew Triana, a guest that we've already had, and well-received guest, and just really the smartest guy you could spend your time talking to. And Andrew's going to talk to us about block periodization. Not just any block periodization, but his personal variety of block periodization that he uses literally for his training. So it's really exciting stuff, and it's very specific to Andrew, and it's really interesting, and he's very good at explaining and describing. So I can't imagine you'd want to miss it if you're interested in the nuts and bolts of training. It's just great stuff. So on to the show. Something that I've done from the beginning and gotten very good and very bad reviews. Some people say, stop talking about drugs. Others have given me feedback and say, hey, tell us more about these drugs. So it's in my nature. I'm going to talk about it. It's just who I am. If I haven't offended you yet, I certainly will at some point. It's just my nature. But a news story that falls into the talk about drugs category. November 2015 down in Texas was the IWF World Championships. Big news. It was on U.S. shores. It was a really well-run event. It was a great event. I've not yet watched all the footage, this being only the end of December. But I've watched as much as I can, and it really just was a great show. A lot of interesting commentary I could give on the show. I've never seen an event with so much disparity between the top-tier lifters and the mid- and low-tier lifters. I found that very interesting. A number of other things I found interesting, including, the closing gap between the sexes and some of the redistribution of populations within weight classes. All very interesting, but for this, the interesting news is the doping report has fallen, and they only had 17 failures. That's really not bad. 17 failures. I have the list in front of me. I won't read any names or nationalities. This is public domain. If you want to know that stuff, you can go look it up. I have no reason to specifically incriminate or criticize anyone or any nation specifically, but the general temperament of the thing is something I care to cover. And anyway, we have 17 failures. I find the drugs that the failures were for very, very interesting, and that's what I want to talk about. We have, let's see, I will take it a little bit out of order from the list that's posted. 9 of the 17 failures involved the oral drug Trinabol. I will come back to that. 2 of the failures involved nandrolone. I will say not what country, but they were both from the same country. I can only chalk that up to just really shit coaching. Anybody who knows anything about sports, and certainly anybody that knows anything about sports pharmacology, should be able to tell you that nandrolone is the single most detectable drug. The fact that these people were taking nandrolone at all, much less within a detectable range of a IOC WADA drug test, it's just ridiculous. It's embarrassing. Either they just really weren't trying, or there was some mislabeling or something, because it's just crap. No one thinks they can pass a drug test taking nandrolone. It's just goofy. One of the nandrolone failures also mentions boldenone. That's acceptable. I can see that. Also, there was a failure for methanolone, which is primobolan. Really, really good drug, clever drug. I could certainly understand why a weight-classed athlete would want to take a very clean, lean, low water retention androgen. Unfortunately, in this case, they got caught, but that makes sense. 2 failures involved letrozole, which is an aromatase inhibitor. It's not even technically a steroid. It is apparently a banned substance. I'm not even sure I was aware of that. My suspicion is that's just what they got caught for. They were probably taking piles of exogenous testosterone, and they were taking the letrozole to prevent the aromatization over to estrogen. That's only speculation on my part, but I'd pretty much stand by it. The really weird one I'll save for last. Going back to the oral Trinabol, I'm just dumbfounded at this. It spans nation. It's a lot of different nations, male and female, which is even more ridiculous because no female on Earth should be taking Trinabol. Trinabol is a just garbage drug. I even have some notes in front of me. I just cut and pasted this out of Wikipedia because I don't even have Trinabol information on the top of my head because it's just, as I said, it's a garbage drug. And on top of that, I'm in the United States. It really doesn't make it to North American shores very much. But, let me see here. Trinabol, sold under the brand name Oral Trinabol, is an anabolic steroid, a chloro-substituted version of methylnandrolone, quote, Dianabol. Gen Farm, Eastern Europe, patent date 1961. This is a dinosaur. Basically what it is a chlorinated Dianabol. It has a giant carbon ring on it. It's sold, marketing wise as being less toxic than Dianabol. Nothing about it suggests that to me. It's just garbage. It's far less potent. No less androgenic. It's just really not a good drug in any shape. But the thing I find amazing about the failure is we're talking about an oral drug with a half-life of something on the order of 8 hours, being chlorinated maybe a little longer, maybe 10 hours. So nonetheless, literally all you had to do was stop taking it 3 days before the test and you should have passed. The fact that all of these people fail speaks to me of a little bit of a conspiracy. And I mean that. Well, I mean that exactly how it sounds. I personally was involved in, the drug doping scene of the 90s, and I know for a fact that periodically the, quote, word would come down that given compound X, Y, or Z would not be tested for. I know for a fact that happened more than a few times with the drug Masteron. It was just kind of spoken through the ether that, hey, that wouldn't be tested for, and lo and behold, there were no failures for it, so it's very possible that it was accurate. What I suspect happened here, being such a goofy drug, an ineffective drug, I suspect that people got wind of the idea that Trinabol would not be tested for, and they kind of overdid their use of it, And then it turns out that that data was inaccurate and the drug was tested for, because I just can't think of another reason why high-class, high-caliber athletes would, one, be taking such a nonsensical compound, and two, why they would be so reckless as to take its, very proximal to the drug test. So I suspect there was probably something going on there, which I find interesting, but still a little bit embarrassing. But the big doping news from this is Aleksei Lokchev, the pretty much the number one lifter on Earth at the moment, failed the drug test for the polypeptide ipamorelin. It's a growth hormone releasing peptide, and I know surprisingly little about it. I mean, I know what it is, that it's a growth hormone releasing peptide, and that it's sub-Q delivery, and it has a very, as in 2-hour, very short half-life. So I'm confused how it was even detected. I don't know much about the specifics of testing that particular compound. I don't know if it creates an antibody or a downstream metabolite or an enzyme uptake that's detectable, but apparently they caught him for this. I wouldn't be surprised we see a bunch of arguing and fighting and possibly even court fighting over it. Interesting nonetheless that the top lifter on Earth would fail for such an obscure and obtuse compound. So that's certainly newsworthy and something to watch. So I'll leave that there. There's an awful lot more I could say about that. I find the doping an interesting subject, and I find WADA just a bunch of fucking idiots and very easy to criticize. So I won't continue. I certainly could and probably will again in the future. But for now, a little news update. 17 failures at the Worlds. Some interesting ideas at work within the failures. A couple of I just didn't tries. A bunch of I probably got bad informations, and then just a couple of unlucky sods. So really, 17 failures in the scope of the almost 300 lifters they had. It's really not a bad scenario. So I feel pretty good about it, and I'm proud that the Worlds were in the U.S. and that they went off without a hitch, essentially, and it was a very well-received event. So all in all, that's kind of a positive news story. I suppose, in light of it ending in a doping report, but all sports do ultimately, so interesting stuff. And now, on to the guest, the first show of 2016. I cannot think of a better way to start 2016 than talk about something that I just don't think gets talked about enough, and that is the reason that almost everybody does everything: money. Back in the old, when I did, the co-hosting of the RX show, we talked a lot about economics, economy, commerce in sports, the concept of, sponsorships and who gets it and why. And it's just something that I don't think enough people are talking about. So I went to the only person I could really think of that was making money in the world of sports, specifically strongman, without himself being, a quote pro strongman. So just thought that the idea of an entrepreneurial spirit within a niche sport was just something interesting and something we should talk about. And so we are going to have a dialogue with Mr. Kalle Beck of Starting Strongman. And it's just a wonderful talk. I really suggest you listen and pay attention. It wanders a little bit, it meanders, but it does, because we're not talking about a hard science. We're talking about an opinion on a way and a modality and a mentality to make money in the world of sports. So it's really interesting stuff. I find it interesting that Kalle and I are so very much different individuals, and we have very similar views in the end. Under it all, the underlying ideas are very similar. So without too much further ado, I bring you Kalle Beck from Starting Strongman.
All right, everybody, as promised, we are on the phone with Mr. Starting Strongman, Kalle Beck, and he is going to talk to us a little bit about the finances, about the science of the money of strength sports, strongman, that sort of thing. Kalle, you there?
Yeah, I'm definitely here. I have about, 3 hours of sleep in the past week, because when you're dealing with money, you get it, and Christmas is a good time of year when you're on that end of it. So it's been a kind of breakthrough moment. Like I've never dealt with this, having like actual e-commerce on my website and having to deal with that holiday rush. I actually, as a Jew, I now enjoy Christmas. I didn't used to. But it's been wonderful. Merry Christmas to all, and go to shop.startingstrongman.com. But anyways, I'm not.
Funny you would say that. I'm going to interrupt you with a real quick little funny. My family, we're completely we have no religion. We don't do anything. We're completely a-religion. But as a weird tradition, once a long time ago, we started going to the Chinese buffet on Christmas Day. And speaking of Jewish, and it's us,
Exactly.
my wife, my two young kids, and then 70 to 100 old Jewish couples. And it's just very funny, and that made me think of it. It kind of made me smile.
Yeah, that sounds very Jewish. It sounds very Jewish of you. So we're kindred spirits in that. And I'm also not religious in any way, but that means I am Jewish because and we're going to stick to the finance and everything and stay on topic, but I think describing the aspects of being Jewish kind of still goes hand in hand with that.
It does.
So you get that thing where I think your brain even stops your thought so you don't say something you didn't want to. But I call this, that's what it is. I call not practicing religion, like not being a practicing religion but still being Jewish by culture, I call that a West Coast Jew.
Okay, fair enough.
You know what I mean? Like every like Jewish person in California, they don't go to synagogue, they don't, they barely remember Hanukkah, and they'll, light the menorah and all those kind of things, but they're definitely Jewish. You know one when you see one. And you get along and you have those same kind of cultural things. It's an interesting thing where it's they say, like, I've heard people say it's not a culture, and I'll say, then how can you like look at someone and see if they're Jewish or not? And I've molded myself good enough that I might have been able to survive World War II by hiding, but I guess I don't have blonde hair though. I'd probably be fucked. But anyways, back to finance. So the first thing I want to say is in our subculture of a subculture in a niche of strongman and powerlifting and strength sports and lifting ridiculously heavy things for no reason other than your own enjoyment and maybe to impress 50 other psychopaths that care, on the internet, is when there's people like to pretend like there is no industry, but every single thing is funded on an industry. And in order for it to be anything, it has to be, or else it's just going to be stagnant. Like, you can get into other controversial topics, and I'm not going to say I agree or disagree with this, but you can take the instance of like poaching, not poaching, but hunting like lions in Africa and all the outrage there's been about that lately. But the argument is because all these, rich white dentists and whoever bid to go hunt these animals and pay lots of money to these conservatories and the everything that it's created an industry, that now the lions, which are, like a major threat to all the locals and serve no purpose other than they might eat your child and all of that, but they're still a majestic animal, it added value to them, so they're no longer going to basically, commit genocide on them and, or poach them and kill them because they're so valuable that they can't. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. In fact, it's actually, I've used the very same argument, but with Northwestern Pacific Logging. The logging companies take very good care of the forests because that is their commodity.
Yeah, if it goes away, they go away. So
Correct.
It might seem like they're destroying it, but they actually care about it more so than any of you.
That's exactly correct.
You're not in, like, if you're not a logger, you're not a logger. If you're not if you're not a hunter, you're not a hunter. You don't understand hunting. And to talk about what maybe a future conversation we can have is, I remember Mariusz Pudzianowski was once asked about drug use in the sport of strongman. It's on YouTube. I don't even know where to find it, but it was a great interview, and it was translated from Polish. And they said, "What do you say about drug use in sport?" And he said, and I think this sums it up better than I've ever heard it. And it goes along the same kind of lines as he said, if you want to know the secrets of sport, become an athlete. If you want to know the secrets of the church, become a priest. If you're in, you know. If you're out, then you wonder. and there's nothing wrong with making money within a subculture or a sport or anything like that. What's wrong is if you make money off of it and you provide no value back.
Agreed.
There's a way to make money where it helps everyone involved and it presents more opportunities for everyone at, every level. Or it at least gives that carrot to dangle that this hobby that we all invest so much time in, and we, break our bodies and have surgeries and, screw up jobs and relationships over and do all this dumb stuff for like we said, like 50 people that check Powerlifting Watch or, starting Strongman or whatever, or, go on Facebook, care about. Like, we put all this effort, and it's not about the money, but in order for something to truly excel, there needs to be some sort of incentive. You can watch the history of any sport. As there is more incentive, the caliber of shows, athletes, performances get better. It's just going to happen. It allows an athlete, if there's enough incentives in an industry for an athlete to, be able to train full time and not have to worry about all those other things like going to some job they don't like or having to start a career and they go, I'm a power lifter. I squat, bench, and deadlift. I make my living squat, bench, and deadlifting. If someone can do that, they have a huge advantage over someone who has to work 40 plus hours a week, worry about getting fired, etc. And there needs to be companies and organizations that are making money within that industry so they can provide those kind of sponsorships. And where, in Strongman in particular, there was a time where that was the case. And I think people don't really understand in the early to basically mid 2000s is there was a lot of money in Strongman. People were making a ton of money in Strongman. When the WSM and the IPSA split, I don't know how much you personally know about it, and I'm not the person to say it. Like, I wasn't really around. I started in the sport in 2007, but I've talked to enough people and I've heard everything that, there was like people got actual, six-figure contracts to say, like, I'm an IPSA strongman, right? And not to compete in one and vice versa. And
yeah, I do actually. My good friend and former co-host Mike Johnston was actually very involved in that time period, and so I got an awful lot of insider info that maybe others didn't get. But you're absolutely right, and that also kind of, as you said, earmarks chronologically the time when things really changed.
Yes, and then the economy crashed right around there, and it was kind of like and it just didn't work out, and then Strongman kind of hit a low. But I feel like it's kind of on the rise again. What's not on the rise is I don't really see, there is more opportunities at the very, very high level. And I'm speaking more so about America. Like, in Europe, they still have Strongman's Champions League, et cetera, where, this guy, from Uzbekistan or whatever can travel every second or third week and do a show and possibly make a couple $100 to $3,000 or whatever it is, and that's a good money to survive where they're from. But I'm speaking in America is how many pro shows that have actual prize money, let alone are flying the athletes out to compete to them, because I think people get misinterpreted. My wife was a professional equestrian. She did hunter jumper, right?
Okay.
Horses, they jump over things and they do stuff like that. Like that's the layman's, like, when we describe Strongman, like, I pick up rocks, I pull trucks. And as an amateur, there was prize money. As a pro, it means they pay you to show up. That's
Which is the case in most athletics outside of powerlifting, strongman, that sort of thing.
Yes. So there's certain contests in here where they pay you to show up, and that is like World's Strongest Man, the Arnold Classic. They pay the athletes way. Not all of them. They pay their way. They're set aside, some amount of money they're put up, etc. That is a professional athlete. If you pay your own way and you have a chance to win $3,000, that's awesome, but it's not exactly what it's a step in the right direction, but it's not what I would consider something being a professional athlete.
I agree.
But I'm not saying it's bad, and I'm not saying I'm not saying that people that aren't going to the Arnold Classic or World's Strongest Man are not pro strongmans, because pro you can also take out of a monetary reasons. Like if you take that aside, I consider pro. Are you competing against the absolute best of your peers? Right? That's another way to take pro. Like, are you at the highest possible level in your sport, in your weight class, etc.? If there's nowhere higher to go than I paid my own way and I got this cool trophy, then you're at a professional level, you're at an elite level, but you're just not getting compensated like that. And there needs to be more of an industry to support it, so those kind of athletes can be compensated, such as that, for their talents, their hard work, etc. And even not just monetary compensation, but recognition. Because what I've found,
one probably leads to the other fairly significantly.
It does. They go hand in hand, and people, I'm sure a lot of people are going to take what I'm saying the wrong way, but that can't be helped. And those same people they already have their whatever it is, so it's irrelevant. But I hope from a personal standpoint, what people would want to know is that I've always thought like this. I've had, like, my brain works, and like that's kind of how my brain works, is I see very big picture, and where I struggle is I have a hard time then focusing on step one. And I think that's kind of where, like, strongman and powerlifting, these style of strength sports fail, is they go, okay, we need prize money, we need sponsors, we need X, we need Z. It's like, how do you get those? That's step 100. We haven't done step one. You need a big enough platform that you can provide value, that those same sponsors will make money.
Bingo. I couldn't agree more. And I personally think that a large portion of the stagnation of any sport, powerlifting's a great example, and strongman might even be a better example. I lay an enormous amount of the stagnation at the foot of the governing bodies, the organizations. They're the only groups, no matter how small they may be, they're bigger than the individual, the competitor. I see them as the only groups really with the resources to expand the scope of strongman into places it presently doesn't exist. What's your take on that?
I think that at the same time, when someone is at the head, you have to lead from the front, of course. If you have the biggest platform, if you have the most chance to help, then it's up to you to do those right things. And you can either do those right things or you can't. And at the same time, and this is where I want to just try to, I'm not going to censor myself, but I'm going to try to explain my words in a way that doesn't offend someone, if you know what I mean. I'm still going to say the same meaning.
It's pointless. You'll offend someone, but by all means.
Okay, so let's just offend people and let's stop with the pretenses. They are the reason that there is strongman has this potential. Without the certain governing bodies, etc. I'm not naming any names or anything like that. That's easy enough to connect all dots. You can point fingers whoever you want, but if you're just pointing fingers, you're also not helping. So actually do something. If you don't like before I say anything, my take on stuff is if you see how someone's doing something and you say, it should be done like this, it should be done like that, rather than try to get them to change and force their hand in something that they probably won't do, why don't you try to do it yourself? That's
perfectly valid train of thought.
Yeah, like, okay, if you don't like how they're doing it, then that's probably an opportunity that, and that's why America is great, and that's capitalism. If you can produce a better product in a better way, then eventually it'll catch traction. Whether you are willing to put in the work for the amount of return it's going to give is another story, and you're probably a smarter man than I if you don't. They're the reason why there is a lot of opportunities. I think there's a lot of missed opportunities. I've been privy to a lot of things that have, went on, and, I'm probably more educated than most, but, they've created a lot of opportunities, but I think there's been a lot left on the table as well. I think that's the fairest way to put it.
I would agree with that. I think
I
think some of the people in charge, if I were going to put it into words, I would say I think a large portion of the steering of the major organization has been, this is really good, we're making pretty good money, let's not try to do anything too weird for fear of screwing it up. And
yeah,
I accept that. I accept that as a modality, but I also see that as the perfect recipe for failure in the end.
Yeah, or stagnation is probably was the word I'd use rather than failure. It's just, complacency in a way. But there has been advances.
There has.
Little by little, there's more and more. Like when I started in Strongman, there was no such thing as a lightweight, 175-pound division, and I'm just I'm a small frame Jewish kid that was horrible at sports, so there's no way I was going to I fucking tried to be a decent 231-pound competitor, and at one point Robert Oberst had dreams and illusions of me being a heavyweight at 5'6" on a good day, which would have kept me single and lonely forever, I'm sure. And I will say that there was a direct correlation between the improvement of my love life and when what was once called Strongman Fitness, which I think I'm pretty sure you're a former colleague and co-host, coined. It was a good idea, horrible name. He knows how I feel on that, and that was changed also in large part to me. But the 175-pound division and a chance to compete at the Arnold Classic and be on the big stage, which, regardless of money, that is fucking cool. Like that, to compete on that stage and watch, and we're not talking about my athletic prep, like what I've done as an athlete or anything in this show, but I will say my only regret as an athlete is to not be able to stand up on that stage and have 5,000 people cheer for me and put on a show, because I know if circumstances. Let me tell you right now,
there was a hell of a lot more people than 5,000 at the Arnold Lightweight Championship. I was there with Pat Castelli, and there was hundreds of thousands of people. It was a staggering mob of people.
Well, you don't have to make me feel even worse about it.
Well, actually, what I was going to say, I was saying that for a reason other than to desecrate your dream of competing there, because I actually share your dream. I really do. We're kindred quite well in that. But the reason I made the statement that there was that many people, and there really was, I'm not exaggerating.
There is.
Is because I believe that's where the growth of the sport lies, is not necessarily in generating raw dollars, which is great, but dollars are only dollars. But there was, say, 100,000 people looking at the stage at the Arnold. A large portion of them had no idea what Strongman was, but they were there, they saw it, and they were exposed to it. I believe that exposure is what will begin to open up avenues in the future, because the seed is now planted in people's heads. Hey, I saw this really little guy picking up this really big rock, and it was kind of cool, and the crowd was wild, and I think that's what makes the opportunities for the future. It's not so much, how many heads did you draw, how much revenue did you generate, oh, let's pack up and go home, but how many seeds did you plant? How much money can we make in the future because we did a good job today? That's kind of where my thinking is.
You're getting me so fired up right now. I want to go. I tore my bicep like 2 weeks ago. I had surgery on Friday. I had surgery like 10 days ago for a torn bicep on my stupid comeback when I'm a broken puppet. You can't put me back together again. I can function at life, but to compete at that level, like the Pat Castellis of the world and the other.
You're all set for CrossFit then. If you can function in life, CrossFit's for you.
Well, I will say, think whatever you want to think. We both already established that we're not the most religious people in the world, but think whatever you want to think for CrossFit. Because I don't care what you think about how the training style is if someone ever got the marketing end and how what you're saying is what the value is in the exposure, it's Greg Glassman and the CrossFit model. It could not be done much better, and you can just look at it. I grew up in a small town called Aromas, California. It's about 800 people. It's kind of right in between, it's like 2 hours south of San Francisco, about 5 hours north of LA on the coast. And it's actually in a tri-county where 3 counties kind of intersect. So this tiny town of 800 people had 3 counties in it. So it's kind of peculiar in that way. So then also a lot of cops live there, it's an interesting town. But one of those is Santa Cruz County, and of course Santa Cruz is where CrossFit started, and Greg Glassman built this gigantic empire, which is currently having the biggest impact on our culture today. And then the CrossFit Games were first held in Aromas. So it was going somewhere. So I've heard about CrossFit since the time where there was like 3 people doing it, just because it was so close to where I grew up. And then when they're holding an actual, like, any sort of people are lifting anything in my tiny town of 800 people, I found that very peculiar. And I'm like, like, I didn't especially back then, there wasn't any, like, at that point, like, people weren't strong that were doing CrossFit. It was a brand new sport. It was the first time they actually had a competition for it. It grew. Just like, pros at World's Strongest Man, were struggling with weights that, Patrick Castelli and myself, and others are doing at 175 pounds in the 2000s or whatever the hell this decade's called now. And I don't want to just, slob on Castelli's balls, but we're both very familiar with him, and he is the most accomplished 175-pound athlete if you look at pure titles.
Absolutely, unquestionably.
He just is. Yeah. And I did beat him once, so.
And it bugs him just ever so slightly. I just let you know that.
So, I can't help but digress, but I know that it bugs him, and I consider him a friend. But as a friend and a peer and an athlete, it should bug him, and that is why you can have friendships, because we share that same passion. Because if something like that didn't bug him and it didn't bug me, that I feel like on certain days I'd be better than him, then we both didn't be who we are. You know what I'm saying?
I do entirely.
It has nothing to do with I hate him or anything, but if as an athlete I don't feel like I'm better than you, then I need to quit.
I absolutely agree. That is the point of all this.
Yes. Like,
that is the point of all this.
I want to be the strongest man in the world at 175 pounds. But I remember he put up an Instagram post, I think like well over a year ago, of like a throwback Thursday to when it was the podium for Washington's Strongest Apple 2012, which I'm staring at the little plaque that I won for it right now that says lightweight men winner. And it's me, Costelli, and Benji Ellers. And Benji at that time was the bridesmaid at the previous two national championships, meaning he got second place.
Right.
And I think he's a phenomenal lightweight and someone I always looked up to. And the entire reason why I flew up to Washington for that show was to test myself against Benji. I had no idea who Pat was at that point. And then I went, holy shit, this is a fucking battle. Like, going into the last event, I think Costelli and I were tied, and Benji was half a point behind. And we all, it was a great show. Like, as far as for a local show, especially in 2012, I don't think that there was a higher level of, lightweights at one show at that point. Nowadays, maybe so. It's grown a lot. There was like 10 of us back then. But I had the misfortune of peaking at all the wrong contests.
Yeah. I was an abysmal strongman myself, but I had the same problem as I was actually competitive at strongman literally before NAS actually formed. I was competing in 97, 98, like 97 through 2000 is actually when I did my little strongman career. So I was just like right on the very tip of it, and it was almost pointless. Like it really didn't go anywhere. It was just a place to compete.
Yeah, it meant like I'm gonna stop talking about myself, even though it's my favorite thing. But my point is, well, I feel so I guess I am. And I'm acting a bit arrogant, and I'm just having fun, everybody. But Costelli, he posted a Throwback Thursday. He said, flashback to the last time and this is at the moment, since he's had some misfortune, and I wouldn't even say misfortune. It's hard to make it your day every day. I think there's like 10, maybe 12 athletes who it could be their day at any point, and there should be in any sport, or else it's boring. But he said, like, flashback to the last time I ever lost at 175 pounds, or anyone ever beat me, and it was a picture with me. And that's how it was in his head. So right then, like, when I see something like that, I know I'm like, oh, I'm in your mind. And I love that. Like, that's fun. That's fun. And the fact that he then, but what he forgot is that he had and then at that Nationals in 2012, is he had a bad day, or bad 2 days at that next Nationals, but that was not in his mind at all. We even went out drinking that night. We got fucked up with a bachelorette party in Tunica, Mississippi at that Nationals.
I say that because literally just yesterday I interviewed Zach McCarley about his
awesome
90K World's Strongest Man title. And it was a very good interview. It was not the kind of interview I typically do, so it was a little challenging for me. I tend to stick to the sciencey stuff and the facts and that sort of thing. So the personables were a little challenging for me. But the big takeaway from it, the most interesting thing I thought he said, and he said a lot of very interesting things, but the one fundamentally most interesting thing he said was, he said, I don't do this, and I think no one else should do this for the titles, for the money. He said, I do this for the experience and the relationships. He said,
definitely.
Newsflash, I got to fly to Europe, meet a bunch of people I never met, see a culture I never saw, and do my thing. He said, that's why I do this.
Yeah, and I agree. I have the amount of people that care about what I do, like it's kind of weird, like when I think about it, and especially like going through surgery, and I'm not the same person I was like as on an athletic sense, I think I'm a better human overall. More well-rounded. When you're being an athlete, it's hard to be a complete person.
Agreed.
If you are, you're not going to do that, and I realize that now. And I don't think that there's, on a very selfish level, I'd like to go back to being selfish and doing that, but at this point, I'm 30. I am hopefully acquiring a house in 2016. I have a company. I'm trying to support this sport that gave so much to me, and I have a great wife, a zoo, everything. Like there's things in my life that are actually more important. When there's that fucking fire that I feel in my chest when I start talking about stuff like that now, that just starts to burn, and I get that itch, and then going, you know what, I could do that. But then I know that, like, there are actually, other than my own selfish hopes for accomplishments and greatness, there's stuff I care about more now, where before I didn't. And it was all consuming. And as an athlete, as a human, it's great to have that fire, but you can apply it to different things. And for instance, I apply that to my business, and hoping one day that I had a part in the Zach McCarleys, the Costellis, the Benji Ellers, the Devin Reese, the current 175-pound champion, all those kind of athletes like that. I hope that everything I've done, every surgery I've had, every argument I've gotten into on Facebook, all this fucking stupid shit I've done will help them get even more of those kind of experiences like Zach did flying to Norway, and those kind of memories and building those relationships, or when I got to fly to China and they get to do those kind of things. I hope that I somehow play a role in more people experiencing hopefully greater things than I did.
Which is what I think the growth of Strongman, and this is where I was actually I was not leading this conversation in any way, but somewhere that I wanted to lead my little portion, my little interjection to all this is, and what you're saying ultimately comes down to truly what I believe. I do lay a large part of the blame for stagnation and a lack of innovation at the feet of the major organizations. Being a competitive powerlifter, I've seen powerlifting destroy itself as a sport by people just, I'll start my own federation, and then that in itself is good, but the federation sucks. And so now we just have crappy copy after crappy copy instead of something actually new and interesting. The WPO was probably the closest thing to new and interesting we had.
It got close.
Right, it got close, exactly. But anyway, what I was going to say is what I ultimately feel, there's plenty of blame to go around, but in reality, I really think the blame is actually at the feet of the individual competitors. Too many people are looking
for
a, quote, sponsorship. They want a handout. They want somebody to help them pay for this difficult and expensive thing. When in reality, it should not be that. It should be them trying to build this difficult and expensive machine that is Strongman so that it can run on its own in the future.
Yeah, because if you don't give back to what you're taking from, then you're just taking.
Exactly. And that is where I believe we're at.
As an athlete, as an individual, as a promoter, as a fan is just taking. That's fine. But they give back.
Not really. Not necessarily.
They give back. I apologize. That's not
buying a ticket, buying a T-shirt. Just passing the pictures around on Facebook. That actually counts. People somehow seem to discount that.
It counts so much. It counts. No, don't apologize. It counts so much. Them consuming is the ultimate giving back if you think about it. And I apologize for that. Was like I'm in a podcast form. You say things as they come out. Sometimes you don't say it in the right way, and I apologize to everyone who is just a fan of the sport. That doesn't necessarily compete it. They're not they're not and of course the tagline for starting Strongman is for everyone, which a lot of people take the wrong way. It doesn't mean that everyone can compete at World's Strongest Man, that everyone is going to be at that main stage at the Arnold pressing a log over their head and screaming while 100,000 people cheer. That's not for everyone. What's for everyone is everyone can take lifting odd objects and doing something that they previously thought was impossible and empowering themselves and making them a stronger person, not just physically. And that's where people mistake what this is about. Is it makes you a stronger it makes you a stronger man. It makes you a stronger
If I could interject some language to that, I agree with everything you said, and I passionately agree with everything you said. But I would also add the language of, and also simply appreciating the sport. Because, for instance, a little random trivia fact is, in my youth, I was exceedingly artistic. I was actually called out as a potential art star. I got some special government grants through my training and that sort of thing, and I ultimately kind of withdrew from it because I recognized that I was good, but I wasn't as good as I think people thought I was going to be, and kind of an emotional.
I feel the same way.
But nonetheless, my point is, I'm not a world-class artist, but I have an extraordinary appreciation of art. And I think that you can have that same relationship with a sport. I mean, look at the NFL. Everybody and their brother has an NFL t-shirt with zero ability to play football on any organized level. I think that Strongman has that sort of potential. Yes, your mother will never press a 300-pound log overhead, but yes, I can see your mother watching Strongman and going, my God, that Zydrunas Savickas is the man. I can see how that can happen. We just need to work toward it as a group.
That's exactly what I've been doing, and I've been trying to do it.
And I accept that, and that's why you're on the phone with me. I'm certainly not challenging you personally.
No, I know.
I'm speaking to my listening audience with you as the vehicle. I never take offense of my tone. No, I apologize.
Oh, to offend me is next to impossible. Everyone out there, please try. I don't care. Like, I love that. Like, that's one of the things. It's probably the biggest waste of my time. But when people get mad at me about something, and I can and I know that they're mad, but I really don't care, and I can steer it in a way where they end up looking horrible, is my favorite thing. Like, I'm a professional troll on some level. You know what I mean? Like people say, "Oh, I'm trolling." If it seems like you're trolling, you're not. Like,
right. Agreed.
That means you're horrible at it.
Right. Yeah, only the bad peeping Tom gets caught. Yes, agreed.
Yeah. The other one just gets a show.
Exactly. Agreed. Well, something that I try to do with my radio show as a rule is I always try to have just a couple little bullet points that when people are done listening, they can go, that's what, that right there, that phrase, that sentence, that tidbit is the reason why I tuned in. You, Kalle Beck, a man who makes a living, as a strongman entrepreneur, a man who's competed, who has a strongman business, give us just a couple random, or perhaps not random, ideas that could improve a competitor today and in the future. Just what would you say is the things, tighten up your game here? What would that be?
As far as for a competitor?
Well, yeah, you're somebody who's an amateur competitor today.
Someone,
maybe
they want to
get
sponsored. Yeah,
maybe they have a future, maybe they don't. But what are the things they need to do to even look like they have a chance?
They need to, instead of thinking on what can I get, they need to first think what can I give. And that pretty much sums it all up right there. If someone comes to me or messages me I had someone message me on fucking Snapchat of all places, would you sponsor me? Like like it was in a nice way. He's like, the person didn't mean any offense to it. I don't want them to feel upset by saying that, but that's not how you do things. Like, if I see someone is providing me value, then I know that I should then return it.
Or at the very least consider returning it.
Yes.
I agree.
Or I put it in the back of my head, oh, that person, I already see that they can do a task. It's called a resume. Like, people want to know what you've done to see if that you can then do the job at hand. And being an athlete and getting sponsored is a job. It doesn't matter if you can have.
I'd like to say on that point, because you're spot on. You're right where I was hoping this conversation would go. And something, and I hope I could say this without causing offense, but your good friend Robert Oberst, I see as the perfect example of what I'm trying to say. He's a very good strongman. He's a professional strongman.
Good. He's not
but
the
by
best.
no means is he top 10 world's strongest man. He's just right now. He's just not that guy. I won't argue it to the letter. But
there's no point in that.
Right, he's not threatening to win the show. He's not Vicus. He's not Shaw. He's not. But what he is very marketable because of what you just said. Is he has accrued value through his persona, through his appearance, through his competitive acumen, through his association with you. He has accrued this value as a commodity, as a product, as it were. And that product has value to sponsors, to other people. They want association with him. They want his face and his presence on and near their product. And that, I think, is where people are going wrong. They just think, oh, look at my trophy. I should get paid for this. And they don't think that someday that trophy won't be relevant. So now what is your actual value? Would you agree with that?
I 100% agree, and I actually have someone knocking on my door, so we'll wrap it up with that. But Robert Oberst is my best friend for a reason. I love him. He's not my friend. He's my brother. In every sense of the word, what family is, that's what we are. We just had this text conversation with each other this morning, and I am sleep deprived and coming off of painkillers and narcotics, so I'm kind of in that mode. So you probably got me at the right time because I'm very open also. But but he's my brother, and we drove together to Idaho 11 hours to compete in a fucking parking lot, and he's been doing strongman for about 3 days. And on that drive, 11 hours there, 11 hours back, and like 4 days spent together, we developed a bond and we talked, and we basically became Master Blaster. Like it, I know what it is. With my mind, if I had that body, the things I could do, like that's what I always wanted as being like that small child, like that kid that was picked last at recess for everything.
Literally became your alter ego, in a sense.
Well, and him with I, like we're so connected, and that's why we will always do everything together, and we'll always try to do that. But he's done all that. We've had these same conversations. We've figured it out together along the way. You can see the success that he's having, and I am getting some level of success, and I've always thought that the way for something to succeed is if everyone succeeds together. I'd rather that we get 50-50. I'd rather that if with this if you had ad revenue for this thing, for your podcast in the future, and you said, hey, would you like to come on? And for that episode, or say my podcast, if I started making a Strong Talk podcast on iTunes and all of that, cheap plug. If I had there's certain podcasts that at the end they give the guests $100 because they made $1,000 off of ad revenue, and that person was the material. That's how business should be done.
Agreed, and that is in fact my goal, and it is written in my syllabus to myself as to where I want to be. I want to be able to pay guests in the future because of my success, because of their success.
Yes, and I will say the same thing. I have a few sponsored athletes on for starting Strongman that for my own financial, like, starting a business is hard. It's just hard. And I'm learning as I go. I didn't go to any school. I've supported myself and lived on my own since I was 15 years old. I've had to figure out life to survive. I'm not saying that I'm poor, me, this or that. It's just a fact. I didn't have anything to fall. I have a great family. They do anything for me, but I didn't have that thing of like, oh, I guess I'm just like, I have this 4 years to do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But like, the more opportunities you have, the better. Like, for instance, I'm some would say slightly above average attractive. Let's be honest. I have good bone structure and
great
features.
Hair.
Yeah, and great hair, and mainly because I have always told people I have great hair and all those things, and I'm a white male. Like, I have a lot of advantage to me in this world as well, and it's up to you to take those advantages. But I was also in situations where I had to figure out life. Like, if your ass is to the fire, I thrive in that, and like, I was not like, I told my athletes, like, okay, like, I can't provide much at this point, whether like my reach might be big, but as a company, it's now just starting to take to the point where I can actually, do these kind of things I want to do. And thankfully I've surrounded myself with people that appreciate that. And I think it's very important for companies and people to remember who believed in you at the start.
Agreed.
And that means a lot to me. I was just on the phone with, or just texting right before this. I'm going to call later today with a friend at 360 Cut Supplements. They're the first people that ever flew me out, paid me for appearances to work in expo, anything, a supplement company. I've had many supplement companies since, like, approach me and do this, and I've always been like, 360, even though they haven't really, I haven't done one of those for 2 years or anything. I just remember, like, I'm not going to take this shitty contract for someone who's just coming around now when someone who believed in me before everything is taken off actually gave me a chance. I'd rather take less from the people that I have a real relationship with that goes back. And on that note, like, it upset me so much that I wasn't able to reimburse yet, like Costelli and, Brittany Diamond and, Erica Jerkard and these, like, athletes that, competed at nationals that I sponsor and support me, like, pay back their entries and stuff like that, I promise, because doing so would have pretty much made my business come to a halt at that point. Like, I have to keep the lights on in my home. Like, above sport, I have a passion for it, and I probably give back more than I should on a personal level. That puts myself in a position where I'm not as, like, for instance, I drive a, like, 18-year-old $1,500 truck that fucking rattles around everywhere, because also I work from home, so it's okay. But before everything, my wife and my family comes first, and I have to pay my own bills, because if I can't support, it comes back to, it needs to be an industry. If I can't support myself, I can't support them. And
Agreed.
I sent everyone personal messages, and I apologize. And it hurt me that I couldn't do that, because I thought at this point I'd be able to.
I do.
And
I do.
Going forward, I'll be able to provide more and more. And it's finally turning that corner. And I'm promoting California's Strongest Woman, and actually going to start promoting contests. And it is
Excellent.
it is NAS/Strongman Corporation. And, like, this was announced about a week ago. You can go to CaliforniaStrongestWoman.com, but I've been putting off promoting a contest because I thought it would take away from my business. You know what it's like, and I needed that to get to a certain point before I distracted myself further, because I already have too much on my plate, and I don't have the resources to delegate yet.
Right.
Which hopefully soon I do, which then, of course, provides jobs. And who do you think I'm gonna delegate those things to? People in the industry.
Right.
Or people that have supported me since day one.
Exactly. Exactly. People who
Like I just talked to someone about bookkeeping for, you know, because I'm like, I don't like doing that. I don't like tracking, you know, like and trust me, my tax bill running my own business reflects that. Like I fucked up. Oh, newsflash, here's life as a self-employed person. We own you. Anyway, but yeah, oops. Yeah, even if you're struggling to like barely pay your bills and you become self-employed at some point, you don't want to do what I did. That was horrible, and that's kind of like why, like, I'd love to pay someone's entry fee, but I'm more I think making sure the government is happy is always smarter. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
But
well, we're closing in on 45 minutes, perhaps an hour, and we've covered all the major tenets I really was hoping we could get out there, and I find it very interesting that someone like yourself has such similar and in many cases even identical views as I do, considering we're on different coasts, we're of different ages. You know, we've even had radically different paths in and out of the sport. So I think there's something to the concepts that we've talked about, that they're universal enough that they transcend all those things. So is there anything, you know, last little thing you want to add? Anything you'd like to say to anyone or just to the sport at large?
I think I don't want to. I think it's a bad to eat itself within and point blames at whoever is a bad model, and I've been guilty of it in myself. And being on both sides, it gave me more of an appreciation of why it is. I don't like you're saying with the governing bodies and stuff. It's like there's truth to that, but assessing blame does nothing to help. It only divides us further, and we need to be a strong community together and all do our little parts to kind of, you know, be the change you want to see in the world. Something that I heard a very smart person, and I was actually looking him up on my phone to get the actual name, was Derek Sivers. He was on Tim Ferriss's podcast, and he was talking about all of this stuff. If someone wants to listen to something after they listen to this and after they listen to the Strong Talk podcast, I would search for that. But he said that if you have like a vision that you want in the world and you want a message you want to get out and you want to enact change, the two most important things in order is first, get as famous as you can, because the more famous you are, the more people you're going to reach with that. And that is the most powerful thing you can have, the bigger audience, etc. And he said, second, get rich. Because then when you have enough income that you're not worried about stuff like, you know, your mortgage, that you have a happy family, etc. If you're financially stable enough that you can do that and you have resources, you can kind of play around and enact the kind of change you want to see in the world. You can, then set up charities. You can do all of that stuff. And there's this notion that people have, and this goes for the sport and, just kind of society in general, is it's bad, like to rich. Like it's not bad to be rich. It's bad to be greedy. So that's kind of what I knew I had to get my word out as much as I can. And now I need to get as rich as I can so I have the resources to do what I want and help everyone else. And it kind of sounds like a very douchey kind of thing, but if you are a somewhat sensible person, you'll understand that that's actually how the world works.
I agree with that entirely. I agree with that. Even if you take away the personal aspect, for instance, look at the success of this nation.
Yes.
That's the exact model we followed. This nation
got
very, very wealthy and impacted the entire world. Many will argue not for the better, but nonetheless, it was done through wealth.
Yes. That's the thing. If you want to have the biggest impact you have on the world, that doesn't mean it's going to be good or bad. It can be either. and it can be seen as good or bad from whoever's perspective it is. But if you want to have the biggest impact on the world you can, no matter subculture, and there's the person I'm waiting for, and you could hear my zoo barking, so I think we'll wrap it up on that, is you need to do those two things. So get famous, get rich, and hopefully we can all do it together, and then what that will lead to is experiences, because that's what the true value is. The friendships, the relationships, etc. So hopefully everyone enjoyed this, and you know where to find me, startingstrongman.com. Find it from there.
And with that, we'll see you next month, folks.